Hello, welcome back to Teacher Talk. Today we're going to talk about WAP Unit 1. I like how I'm saying today, like I'm not clearly recording a bunch of these in a row because I don't have time to do my hair like this every day. So today I just want to give you a quick intro into how I approach Unit 1. To be really clear, I want to distinguish because there's simultaneous videos going on for teachers and for students. So these Teacher Talk videos that talk about Unit 1, for example, I'm talking about it from the teacher side. Here's what lessons I use, here's what things I emphasize with the kids, here's problems to anticipate. But if you're especially newer to the content, you should also check out the student videos because I also have like an introduction to Unit 1 that is what I kind of teach to my students. So if you're looking more for just a content overview, you should also check out that video. This is a little bit more behind the scenes, like how I structure my Unit 1 planning. So what is in this unit? It's super awkward. This unit is so awkward. It's called the Global Tapestry. It starts off like in the middle of a time period, right? It starts in the middle of the post-classical era. I'm not sure why the College Board couldn't have just started it in the year 600, but whatever. The way I basically explain this unit to my kids is I call it roll call. I'm like, okay, basically we're like Bill and Ted, we're dropped into the year 1200 and we're like, roll call, who's here? What's going on? There's not really any narrative. We're just sort of jumping around to see like what's going on in China, what's going on in the Middle East, what's going on in South and Southeast Asia, so on and so forth. And so students really, if you approach it that way, it's really helpful for students because they don't really have to yet put anything together into a big narrative. They're literally just sort of like, okay, I'm going to set the foundation, what's going on in these different parts of the world. So these are the main civilizations that often are covered. We're going to talk about how you don't have to cover all of these in extreme detail. I talked about that on my YouTube video about covering the content, but these are kind of the main ones. And I'll mention that, well, I'll talk about it later, but one of the pitfalls is medieval Europe, and I'll talk about that in a second. And one of the frustrations or the difficulties of a lot of even experienced AP World History teachers is all of these South and Southeast Asian kingdoms and empires, because for a lot of us, myself included, that was kind of new information that got added in the new curriculum when we started the modern course. The other thing I want to mention is you'll notice I have the Mongols in italics. That's because the way the College Board sets it up, they don't talk about the Mongols till Unit 2. So essentially, they set up Unit 1 is like, okay, what civilizations are around in around 1200, 1300? And then Unit 2 is going back over that same time period and talking about trade routes and how they interact with each other. And that's when they talk about the Mongols, because they put the Mongols kind of next to the Silk Road, which makes sense. So what I kind of like to think about is that the Mongols kind of wipe the slate clean. So Unit 1 is like, here are all these massive post-classical kingdoms and empires, and then the Mongols sort of wipe the slate clean at the beginning of Unit 2, and then we can just talk about like, okay, what interactions were occurring, how does the Mongol conquest, how is it going to lead to this new time period after Unit 2. So again, this is where I might suggest teaching Unit 1 and 2 together. Like I don't do a big test at the end of Unit 1 because it's confusing, because Unit 2 just continues the narrative. So I might stop and do kind of like a mini test or a quiz to make sure they were paying attention, but I really kind of lump Unit 1 and 2 all together. Okay, what's important in this unit? It's really two questions. You want students to be able to answer, how did states gain and maintain power? So how did these post-classical states come to power, and how are they attempting to stay in power? So if you're looking at the Abbasid or the Abbasid Caliphate, you don't have to know everything about it, but you would want to think about what are they doing to try to keep power over Dar al-Islam? And are they succeeding or are they failing? Spoiler, by the 1200s, they're kind of failing, right? You have these different groups coming in. Or if you hop over to the Inca Empire, right? You don't need to know everything about the Inca, but you would want to think about like, what state building techniques are they using? How are they using the Mita system as this really unique way to control their population? Or how are they interacting with their environment? They're using terrace agriculture and all of this innovation. So again, there's not really a narrative in this unit. It's literally just starting to think through like, what are states doing? And this is where, if you watched my Unit 0 video, right, this can really be a continuation of what you talked about in Unit 0, right? You talked about how did Rome keep power? How did the Han keep power? And you did sort of a thematic chart of what states did. You can continue that into Unit 1 and see, oh, hey, look, like the Middle Eastern empires are continuing what the Persians did. Or a lot of other empires are learning from what the ancient and classical kingdoms had built, right? What are my favorite lessons? I think that Unit 1 is a really good unit to just start off with a project because you kind of want to get through this unit relatively quickly. And again, they don't need to know a ton of depth. They just need to know big picture, like who is ruling different major regions and how are they ruling those regions. So it's really ripe for like comparison. I have a project that I do that's called Anatomy of a Post-Classical State. It's up on my website, antisocialstudies.org. And basically, individuals or groups get one of these main post-classical states and they create sort of an anatomy, right? I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's like the head is like the government system, the heart is the cultural beliefs. In the hand, you have a pen, and it's like what literary traditions are they creating? It basically provides kids with a creative like snapshot of a post-classical state. That doesn't mean you would only do the project, but basically that's a way to get through a lot of these kingdoms and empires really quickly so that you can get to Unit 2, which is more interesting because it's like, how did they then interact with each other? There's also a good documentary that's available on Amazon Prime. It's PBS, The Story of China. Episode 3 is like around 55 minutes, and it's all about the Song Dynasty. It's a documentary. It's an old British guy talking about China, but as far as those types of documentaries go, it's super interesting. So even if you don't think your students will be able to stay awake, I highly recommend you watch it. I learned so much about the Song Dynasty that's super, super fascinating. And there's a lot of tidbits in there that you can share with your students. For example, in Hangzhou, the southern capital of the Song Dynasty, there was a gay club. Like there was all this cosmopolitan, like urban nightlife. And I think a lot of my students were really interested to hear about that. What skills go well with this unit comparison? This is the unit where you really want to get kids used to how to compare two things, right? In fact, when I have my students take notes on their reading in Unit 1, I don't have them take notes the normal way. I just have them make spice charts, like spice tea charts. I literally say, let's not even worry about any sort of narrative. Let's just say, like, here, you're going to take a spice tea chart for 1.1. It's going to be on the Song Dynasty. For 1.2, it's on the Abbasid Caliphate. That way we can then easily compare. You have another spice chart for like the South and Southeast Asian kingdoms, the African kingdoms, the American kingdoms. Like you don't even really have to worry about dates and chronology and like events that led to other things. You really just want your kids to get a snapshot. And so having them like put their notes in some sort of spice tea chart. Again, if you want templates for that, on my website, I have just blank spice tea chart templates with some explanations for the kids. And then it really lends itself to starting to get kids used to argumentation, right? Writing a thesis statement, answering a question very simply. So you can give kids really simple checks for understanding, like identify and explain one common cultural practice between the Abbasid and the Song Dynasty. And they get used to like answering it and providing evidence. What goes wrong in this unit? Okay. I don't like this unit because I struggle with the lack of a narrative, a lack of chronology. There's not really a story in this unit at all. It's just like, what were the Song? Okay, cool. What were the Abbasids? Okay, cool. What was the Delhi Sultanate? Like, and it's hard to make it into some sort of narrative. That's why I say, like, do a project, have them compare, and then move on. Two areas too. Kids and teachers get overwhelmed with Southeast Asia. I'm so glad that the College Board has been able to add in more diversity and more depth on parts of the world that they haven't before, but it's overwhelming because kids are going to read about these Southeast Asian kingdoms and be like, there are so many vowels and so many letters. What do I do? So you're going to read about like the Vijayanagara Empire, the Majapahit, the Khmer, the Champa, the Srivijaya, like there's a ton. And if I'm being totally honest, I didn't learn about any of those when I was in school. And so, which is why we need to teach them now, but it makes it challenging for teachers because I feel pretty confident talking about medieval Europe or talking even about the Song Dynasty, but I have to go do a bunch of research to learn about the Majapahit. Side note, I'm going to make a video all about the Southeast Asian kingdoms for students that like teachers might want to watch too. I'm going to really oversimplify it, but it'll at least give us somewhere to start. Here's the real issue that goes wrong with this unit is that a lot of teachers love talking about medieval Europe. I do too, but like we don't need to. Like medieval Europe is the least important of these different regions. And so you're really not going to need to talk much about the Crusades in a lot of detail or the Black Death in a lot of detail. Yeah, you want to talk about how the Crusades kind of open Europe back up to trade, but really you're talking about the Crusades from the perspective of like Dar al-Islam. There's just really no place for your super fun 3-day project on the Black Death or your simulation where it's like, you get the plague. Like, there's just, you don't need that in AP World History anymore. European history in general has been really de-emphasized. So just be careful, especially if you've taught world history for a long time. You're going to have a lot of lessons that you're like, but I love this lesson all about the Magna Carta. And it's like, you really don't need to talk about it in that much detail, right? I spend one day talking about kind of like, okay, late medieval Europe, and here are the things you need to know. And then I move on, especially because the later eras get really Eurocentric, right? When we talk about industrialization, imperialism, global conflict in the 20th century, now is the opportunity in units 1 and 2 and 3 to really show kids like how amazing the non-European parts of the world were, right? This is the time when African, Middle Eastern, and Asian empires are flourishing. American empires are like crushing it. And so really you want to use this time to really focus on them, because we're going to talk about Europe way more later. Whew, okay, that's how I approach Unit 1. Again, I kind of do short and sweet. I don't spend a ton of time on it. I'd say maybe 2 weeks. And again, I sort of do a quick check, like a big quiz or something, and then I move right into Unit 2 to talk about, okay, now they're exchanging and they're communicating along the Silk Road. The Mongols come and conquer everyone, yada, yada, yada. So coming soon will be my video all on Unit 2. But for now, check out my website, antisocialstudies.org, for my Unit 1 lesson plans. I put my favorite ones up there. Some are free, and some you have to be a Patreon subscriber, but that's just $1 a month. So if you like what I'm putting out there, then please consider joining. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, and good luck. Have fun with Unit 1, the Global Tapestry, whatever that is. Bye.